Hi everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you today how to make the St. Patrick's Day cake using a Irish themed gnome instead of a leprechaun and all the little fixins you see here. Now to get started with our cake, I'm going to make the rainbow first. I'm going to start out with some red gum paste and I'm going to Roy G. Biv it. So I've got red gum paste, rolling it out to maybe the width of a pencil, I'd say, right around there. And I'm going to just roll it out as evenly thickness as I can, and then I'm going to curl up the one side just because it makes it look cuter, and then just loop it around. I'm using my fondant spreading paddle there as kind of a guide. It's not going to be perfect, it's going to keep changing, but this at least kind of gives me an idea of where I stand with things. So now that I've got the R, I'm going with the O. I did my orange loop now. Just like before, made a little loop at the bottom just to make it fancy. Going with the yellow, do the same thing, and as you can see, I'm kind of stacking up the little loops I'm making just because that's what I did. I wanted to make it a little cuter. After my orange and yellow, I'm going to my green. Same thing as before, trying to make sure it's about the thickness of a pencil, try to make it all uniform as I can. Do my little curl at the bottom. And then I'm going to blue for my Biv, except I don't have the I. I'm just going to go right, it's more Roy G. Bip, I guess, because I'm going to do blue and purple. So there's my blue, my final color is purple. Again, I'm using my paddle just to make a nice mold of everything, so that way it has a perfect curve that you will be able to really appreciate when it's nice and smooth and symmetrical like that. So I trim off all the extras on the one side. I'm using my stick there to make sure that bottom purple lines up with all the colors on the other side. And now I'm taking a paintbrush and I'm getting it wet with water and going between each color's loop and just going all the way around. And this way they're going to set, and when it dries it will all stick together and it will be a freestanding rainbow when I put the little lollipop stick on the back. I'll show you that later though. So for now it's got to dry. Alright, I am making this on a 9-inch cake. It is about 4 inches tall. I'm rolling out some green fondant. I've got my nice chilled cake there. I'm just smoothing down my fondant. Trim off the extras, like nothing unusual going on here. That's my kids' lunch right there in the corner because they use my counter when they know I'm using it too. That's what happens when you work at home in your kitchen, right? Now I'm going to put the black belt around my cake, so I'm rolling out some black fondant again. And again, this green that I rolled out, this black that I'm using, it's fondant, so I'm using it to cover my cake. And as you can see, my tool broke. I was so sad. I've had that tool for like a decade or something, and it just broke. It's like, what the heck? You use a cheap little plastic tool for hundreds of times, and they just fall apart on you after almost 9 years. Anyway, I was able to roll out my belt there, wrap it around, smooth it with my little fondant paddle, nice and neat, trim off the extra in the back, which you didn't see because it turned out my entire body got in front of the camera, so you didn't need to see my sweatshirt I'm wearing. Now I'm making the gold buckle. This is just some gold gum paste. I cut out a big square, cut out a smaller square in the center. I'm just smoothing off the sides there because these plastic cutters, I love them, but they don't always make the cleanest cuts. I'll be honest. So I cut a little rectangle there for the part of the buckle that goes through. I don't know what that little thing is called. So once I'm happy with them, I'm going to stick them right on the cake, right in the center. Now I've got some light green gum paste here that I rolled out. It's kind of marbled with the white, and I just liked it that way, so I left it. It makes it a little more interesting looking. And I'm using a dogwood flower mold that I have in this flower kit, and I am making 4-leaf clovers out of it. It's like, aren't I clever? So clever. So I made a whole bunch of them, and I'm putting a little bit of water on the back, sticking them around, and I'm not sticking them flat up. I'm leaving the petals, I guess leaves, so that they curve outward a little bit, just to make it more interesting, you know, make it more fun rather than flat up against it. So I have those going around the cake. Now I'm coming back to the rainbow to put the lollipop stick on the back. You just put some gum paste on it, add a little water, and then carefully press it to the back of your rainbow and let it sit again. Alright, to begin our gnome, I'm going to start with his body. I'm starting with some light green gum paste, and I'm rolling it out, or rounding it out I should say, over top of a little metal cup that I have. I'm using it in order to create a dome so he's a little more hollow, because he's otherwise going to be very solid and very heavy. So I smoothed him over the little cup there, rounded it out. You can see I lifted it off. And now I'm going to trim some off because it's just too big. He needed to be a little bit smaller. So I'm trimming it down, making it a little smaller. I put it on top of my small rolling pin there. And I'm just, again, smoothing it out as best I can, trying to straighten out the sides a little bit. I want them to be round, but not too round. And again, just trimming off the extra. And this time I think I have a pretty good length. I'm happy with it, so I'm going to press him down against the countertop there to flatten that bottom edge. And then I'm going to put it aside and work on the next bottom ring here. So I'm going to take this dark green now to make his little pair of pants, I guess they'd be. And I rolled it out to pretty even thickness. He's not real thick though itself, it's just nice and even. I cut a circle that fit the width of the body pretty well, and I'm taking a smaller circle and stamping out the center so again it's hollow just like the top part of the body. Putting a little water between the two and then put them together. And now I'm going to add a belt so that my little seam there isn't quite so rough. So this is black gum paste. I rolled it out as thin as I could really. And I've got, a pretty good sized little strip going there. I'm putting some water on the back of it. And then when I put it around between the two greens, I'm doing it so it covers more of the light green than the dark green because I don't have a lot of the dark to begin with. So I don't want to lose too much of it, but I do want to lose that seam. So that's what I'm doing right there. That was my goal. Put a little bit of water where they come together. Calling it good. Now I'm going to add his beard. I've got some orange gum paste here. I rolled it out, as you can see, kind of thin. It's not crazy thin, but it's not thick either. I'm shaping it with my knife into an oval, and now I'm kind of flattening out the sides a little bit because I don't want a big stiff ledge. I want it to kind of be nice and smooth. So I'm using the back of my knife blade now to put some ridges into the edges, just there. I'll kind of scallop it out. And with it kind of tapered at the bottom, it's more beard-like, kind of like a Santa Claus beard, or a gnome beard, if you will. I'm going to hold it up there to my gnome. I want it to cover the little seam in the front where the belt comes together. And then I trimmed off any extra that I had. I'm flattening the top because it is going to fold over the top a little bit where the hat is going to end up sitting, so I don't want to be too thick. I'm tapering the edges there just a little bit so it'll fit and sit a little nicer. And then I'm also going to add a few more little decorations to it. I'm using my veining tool and just making some pressure marks in it. Just to make it look a little more grained like a beard. Makes it more interesting to look at too. And you can see where I had stuck it onto the gnome's body and then peeled it off to do this. So yeah, you should do that before you add water to the back of it. Now I found a circle cutter that I like the size of, and I'm going to take this plug out of his nose here. I'm trying to cut through the orange but not necessarily into the green. And that's where his nose is going to be. So I made a big ball of some peachy color gum paste right there. And just popped it right in and it fills it up perfectly. Now I'm taking the same light green as before and I'm rolling it between my hands to create a cone shape, which as you see is right there. I'm using my knife to hollow it out so it's not going to be so heavy or thick sitting on top of his head. And then I'm going to use my fondant paddle to roll it and roll it and roll it and roll it and roll it until it's nice and smooth and even and not as crazy wonky shaped as it was before. I'm going to want it to try to be flat on the bottom as much as I can, but I'm not going to go crazy because I will trim it. I want it to follow around the curve of the nose, so I don't want it to sit flat on the face. I want it to kind of go up and down around the nose and flare out to the sides a little bit to come down over the side of his head. So pull it and polish it and, do what you have to do to get that shape going. When you're happy with your hat, make sure it's nice and tall too, because that kind of makes it fun. I'm going to take the same dark green that is the pants of my little gnome here, and I'm going to create a border around the edge of his hat. So I'm putting a little bit of water down first, and then I'm going to oh so carefully start following it around the bridge of his nose and around the edge of the hat. When you're doing this, make sure you try not to lose any of that curve that you do have going around the nose. That's why I'm kind of lifting it off and using my finger to almost create bends, if you will, so that it really does shape around it and it doesn't just go straight across and mute all of the effect that I got going there. See, I'm even pushing down with my the back of my nails there. I'm using my veining tool again, just put a couple little creases around his nose. Again, just emphasizing it, going around it. And then I'm going to add one more little detail to him. He's almost done. He's pretty darn simple. I rolled out the black gum paste again, really, really thin. made a thin little black stripe out of it, and that's going to go around the hat. Put it in place with a little bit of water. Make sure you don't go too high or too low with it, have it nice and centered. And now I'm going to make a little gold buckle for it. And I have my gold gum paste here. I have a little tiny rectangle that I cut out, and I'm using my veining tool to just press a hole in the center and then wiggle it around to open it up to try to make a rectangular shaped hole in the center. It's not perfect, but it's not shabby either, I gotta say, and it's nice and small. You could do something real big if you wanted to make it more whimsical, but this is what I came up with, and I was really happy with him. I think he's just very cute. Now I'm going to show you how I made my pot of gold. This ball of mismatched colors here is a bunch of scraps that I had that I'm not going to use. So I'm going to use them here. And rather than black, which is like super precious because it's a pain to make, and you can see my hands are already a little bit stained from it earlier, I'm going to save as much of it as I can by rolling it out, flatten the top and bottom off, and then roll out my black gum paste nice and thin, almost like covering a cake with fondant. This is what I'm doing here. So I folded it over the bottom of what's going to be my little pot of gold. I'm just trimming off the extra. I'm going to pull it up as best I can so I don't have any wrinkles or folds, just like when you lay fondant over your cake. Trim off the edge, just like before. And right there it was really wrinkly. It was giving me a hard time. And so, yeah, just keep working that until you have it nice and flush with the top. And I do this sometimes where I need to have a big wad of gum paste and I don't necessarily want to use any of my good colors to just make a solid ball of something precious. I'll just throw my scraps in there. Works perfectly, and no one will ever know unless they bite it, in which case maybe they'll feel it's a rainbow treat. Yeah, see? I meant to do that. Alright, I'm taking some more of my black gum paste, rolling out a big old long Tootsie Roll stretch of it, and this is going to become the ring around the top of my little pot of gold. So I paint some water around there. I put it around. It's a little too long. Trim some off. Be careful you don't trim too much off because then you have to start it over again. But once you get a nice ring around it, then put it into place. Press it down a little bit so it holds, and there you go. A little pot, right? Looking good. We just need our gold. And that part is going to be super easy. All I did was put a little bit of water down on the top there in the center just to help my little colored beads stick, and then I pour in my metallic gold edible beads there. Make a nice little pile on top, and there you go, pot of gold. Now take your rainbow that it's had a chance to set, press it into your cake, take your gnome, take your pot of gold, put them together, and you get yourself a nice little gnome-themed St. Patrick's Day cake. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe because it really does help me out. I've got a whole bunch of other videos out there, so take a look if you'd like. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.